Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. More major progress this week on the 2014 Farm Bill. Joining us now is Jody Campeacci, our Ag Policy Specialist. And Jody, another big sigh of relief as we saw some closure. What kind of steps can we expect next for the Farm Bill?
Well, now that we've made this progress, the next steps are, the USDA agencies will start working on rules and regulations and implementation. So we have a lot of things that will be coming around in the next few months.
And in terms of priorities, we were talking the livestock disaster programs will kind of come to the top, right?
Yes, the livestock disaster assistance programs, we had the livestock forage program and the livestock indemnity program, which were very important for Oklahoma producers in the last few years. However, they were only authorized through 2011, so these new programs will actually go back and cover losses for 2012 and 2013. So a key priority is to get those programs in place as soon as possible. So what I would recommend for producers to do is to, make sure their records are ready to go, maybe get with their FSA agent and figure out what records they need to go back and get coverage for 2012 and 2013.
Now you're also sorting through crop insurance versus commodity programs. I'm sure producers have a lot of questions. What kind of advice do you have at this point?
Right now, starting the next few months, producers will be able to start enrolling in the new commodity programs. And we have the ARC program and the PLC. ARC is a revenue protection program. PLC is a price coverage program similar to the counter-cyclical payment program in the previous Farm Bill. That sign up, usually starts around April and ends in June. I anticipate that will likely occur this time, although it could be slightly delayed once we kind of figure out, all the key details. Now, crop insurance, we have some new crop insurance programs, new supplemental coverage options, and then also just some other changes to crop insurance. Those programs will not be implemented until the 2015 crop year.
So we'll have to wait a little bit on those. Right. Now, this Farm Bill is no small undertaking. It's a pretty big document, correct?
Yes, about 950 pages.
So you have some homework to do, but one thing is you'll be working on programming throughout the spring and throughout the year to share with people across the state?
Yes, OSU Extension will have many programs across the state. We'll have meetings, webinars, newsletters, all kinds of information to help our producers.
Okay, and of course we'll have you on SUNUP throughout the spring and throughout the year as well.
Yes.
Okay, Jody Campeacci, our Ag Policy Specialist. Thanks a lot.
In the past on the Cow-Calf Corner, we have visited with you about the length of time that calving should take place, whether it's a cow or a heifer. We've visited about the fact that stage 2 of parturition, and that is that time frame between when we first see the appearance of a water bag or baby calf's feet and have complete delivery on the ground, and that's about 1 hour's time if everything's going to go well in the case of the first calf 2-year-old heifer. It's about half that, about 30 minutes in the case of the adult cow. Now, what's taking place? What's occurring if we allow that to go much longer than that? Well, we've got some impacts on both the baby calf and on the cow herself. And today let's visit about how that might affect the cow in terms of subsequent reproduction. Research up at Montana about 30 years ago took a look at what was taking place if we have 2-year-old heifers that are either given assistance within about that first hour of stage 2, or the other group was allowed to go not only past an hour, but wasn't given assistance until 2 hours after stage 2 begun. So they had two groups, one they called giving early assistance, one was given late assistance. Those that were given the early assistance, they had a higher percentage, about 17% higher, in terms of those that were cycling at the start of the next breeding season. and that translated into a 20% increase in terms of those that actually became pregnant in the upcoming breeding season. So it looks to me like that as we go through this calving season, especially as we're watching those 2-year-old heifers, if we're getting out there to that hour time frame and they haven't completely calved, then I think applying some assistance will be helpful not only to the calf, but also to that heifer in terms of giving her a better chance to recycle and rebreed for next year's calf crop. We hope this is helpful to you, and if you'd like more information about working with these cows and heifers at calving time, go to the SUNUP website. Look under show links and look for a link for a publication. It's E-1006. It's called Calving Time Management for Beef Cows and Heifers. It's got a lot of information that'll be helpful to you this calving season. And we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
We've seen a 42-cent jump in wheat prices in the past few days. Joining us now is Kim Anderson, our crop marketing specialist. And Kim, what do you think is behind this increase?
Well, probably the biggest factor behind the price increase is the crop conditions that USDA released this last week. You look at Oklahoma crop conditions, the poor to very poor went from 8% to 24%. The good to excellent category went from 63 to 36%. We had a like decline in the Kansas crop. Of course, the Texas crop, there's a small change in it to slightly worse, but Texas crop was already in relatively poor conditions due to the drought anyway.
You're also keeping an eye on the supply and demand numbers that will be released early next week?
Right, on Monday around 11 o'clock our time, the USDA will release the WASDA report. Ending stocks are the big numbers. There's slight changes in them, lowering corn and wheat ending stocks. You got wheat expected to go down from 608 to 603 million. Corn ending stocks from 1,631 million to 1,619. Beans down from 150 million down to 143. You look at the world, again, slight changes. Wheat 6.81 billion down to 6.80. Corn 6.31 to 6. So slightly smaller ending stocks, but at least they're in the right direction of lower rather than higher.
And then what do you expect prices to do?
Well, we've had this good run up in prices. We're going to have to wait and see what happens when wheat comes out of dormancy to see if we do have poor conditions. I'm watching that March contract. You know, it challenged that $6 support. It came back up, ran through 630, 640. If it can break 660, then it'll run up another 20 cents. We're going to have to wait and see what this report says on Monday to see whether it's going to do that or not.
And in terms of advice for producers, should they be selling their wheat?
Well, if I had wheat in the bin and I'd been waiting for higher prices, I think I'd pull the trigger on it, maybe sell it all, but at least sell a good portion of it. Looking at the new crop, I think that if you're concerned about prices, if you can't afford lower prices, then I'd probably price 10, 15, 20% of it just to partake of some of this in case this crop does improve in condition and prices go lower.
Okay, Kim Anderson, we'll see you next week. Thanks a lot.
Hi, I'm Al Sutherland with your Mesonet weather report. It has been crazy cold this week, so we wanted to compare this year to other recent Februaries. A table of El Reno high temperatures for the first 5 days in February since 2011 shows that February started out cold like this year. 2012 and 2013 were much milder. The big difference this year from others is that we are getting colder after the first 5 days in February. That decline in temperature shows up markedly when we chart the high temperatures for these first 5 days in February for the last 4 years. The purple and black line showing 2014 starts off near 30 degrees and then falls. All the lines for other years are higher by the 5th of February. This entrenched cold is putting added stress on Oklahoma's cattle. A graph from Reno shows the cold starting up as we entered February. The Cattle Comfort Index, the solid blue, bounces between 0 and 20 degrees through the 5th and then drops dramatically down close to -20, coming up only close to 0 on Wednesday. To see how much stress this cold is adding to cattle near you, check the Cattle Comfort graph for your location. As of February 5th, the number of counties with burn bans has dropped to 9. Now here's Gary with a look at our drought conditions.
Thanks, Al. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be back on SUNUP. We've certainly roared back into winter during February, and the snow and the ice are great if you need the moisture, but some places, unfortunately, still didn't get enough to tackle one of the major concerns I deal with, and that is drought. So let's take a look at that drought map that we just saw come out on Thursday, and we did see some increase across far western Oklahoma. If you'll look into the Roger Mills County, that area didn't see much moisture. They saw maybe a quarter to a half inch, but that wasn't enough to offset the long-term drought concerns that were reported to us this week. So we did see that D3 or extreme drought move farther north into Roger Mills County and far southern Ellis County. We also saw the outlooks for precipitation and temperature for the month of February come out from the National Weather Service's Climate Prediction Center. For temperature, they show increased odds of below normal temperatures for the northern 2/3 of the state. Obviously, after this first week, we're already well on our way towards that. For precipitation, I'm afraid they don't show any leanings towards drier than normal or wetter than normal or even near normal. So really a lack of a forecast or an outlook on precipitation. Now, when you put all those together, where the drought is at right now, and then you include the outlooks from the Climate Prediction Center, we get the U.S. Monthly Drought Outlook for February. And they show areas where there's drought now, it's probably going to persist through the month of February. And also that little area out across western Oklahoma that just has abnormally dry conditions right now is expected to increase to full drought. So we've gotten some good moisture. We can certainly hope for some more. I hope it's in the form of rain. I'm really tired of the snow. But hey, we'll take anything we can get, right? That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
Hi, welcome to Shop Stop. Today we want to talk a little bit about tractor safety.
We have a lot of these compact tractors around, and some of the problems you have with a compact tractor is some of them don't have drawbars, and so when we're pulling on things, we're pulling with a 3-point hitch.
And it's generally not a good idea. You know, we worry about as the hitch point moves up, if we start pulling from a higher point on the tractor, we got a tendency that tractor may want to flip over backwards.
And so, like Randy will demonstrate, if you start pulling that 3-point is free to float, so it can come up and it can get it flipped over before you're ready or before you realize how fast it's going.
Yeah, so naturally if you're pulling from a drawbar, the drawbar is going to stay fixed, which is where we want to pull from, but when we don't have one, we run into this. So maybe a better option might be to hook to the front of the tractor.
Correct, yeah. If you hook to the front, then you change where your leverage points are, and the back of the tractor is heavier, and so it may be able to pull that way without getting yourself in a predicament.
And maybe one of the saving graces for a lot of these smaller tractors is they're light enough that they don't get enough traction to want to pull over backwards. But you never know, you may start spinning a tire and then all of a sudden catch something.
That's right.
And if you do, then when they start going over backwards, they'll go over very fast.
So there's a tip for you on where to hitch to on some of these compacts, keep you out of a trouble of possible rollover.
We'll see you next week on Shop Stop.
Without question, Oklahoma is a cattle state, but another type of large animal is getting some attention. SUNUP's Dave Deacon takes us to a recent event where alpacas are the stars of the show.
When you see a bus like this coming into an arena, you would think that it's a band showing up for a concert. This time, you would be wrong. These buses are at the Lazy E Arena near Guthrie for
one of the largest alpaca shows in the Southwest, and we'll have about 350 alpacas coming in. I started part-time while I was a professor at OU, and that was about 15, 16 years ago. And after a little while, I decided, you know, I want to do this full-time. So now I'm a full-time farmer.
They take a little more work. They're not like cattle. You know, cattle you can send out there and you know, they can get to be a little rough. These are very soft and, you know, nice, friendly type of animals.
These animals are very, very easy to raise, very gentle on the land, stocking rate's good, very attractive animal when you're raising children, and now when children are up out of the house, they're fairly easy for me to take care of.
And here's the answer to the question that you wanted to ask.
You know, they spit, but it's not really, they're spitting at themselves.
You get baptized, and it's not a big deal. You just wipe it off and you keep going.
Alpacas are not native to Oklahoma, nor even really North America, but it looks like they're here to stay.
25 years ago, alpacas began to be imported into the United States, and people began to realize their utility as a fiber animal. We can no longer import animals from South America, but we've got about 250,000 animals in the United States, and that's enough to carry on a very robust breeding program. There are two breeds of alpaca. One is the fluffy Wakaya, which is a very fluffy, crimpy fleece. The other is the Surrey. If you remember the old song, the Surrey with the fringe on top, you'll often see the Surreys with sort of drapey dreadlocks coming off their forehead.
And with two different types of alpacas, that makes for two different types of fleece and two different markets for the finished product.
Their fleece is a wonderful fleece in regards to doing high-end clothing on the commercial side and socks and blankets and all of those types of things.
Both have use. The Surrey fleece is very good as a silk equivalent. It's very bright, very lustrous, straight fiber, great for making into worsted fabrics. The Wakaya fleece being more crimpy, great for sweaters and things like that, where you want some of that warmth. These animals do very, very well, very clean, non-smelly, and are easy to train for children. People in the ring with young children, 4 or 5 years old, leading these alpacas in the ring.
The show was a great success. It brought people and alpaca to the Lazy E from all over the country.
We come here because of this new facility that they're using, and because the competition is good, the show should start to grow again. During these hard times, you know, the shows have been down in regards to participation and that type of stuff, but now they're starting to come back, and, you know, we help that in regards to bringing the amount of animals that we have, and it works out really well.
So when you see clothing made from alpaca fleece, you may wonder if it came from a fluffy one or one with a fringe on top. But you'll know that the people who raise them take pride in these camelids. And when an alpaca show comes to your town, you will see that firsthand.
We want to talk more about taking care of alpacas in Oklahoma with Dr. Melanie Boileau, who is a food animal veterinarian here at OSU. And Dr. Boileau, let's start by talking about the suitability of alpacas in an environment like Oklahoma.
So that's a very good question. The alpacas are from the South America, the high plains. And so they're used to cool, dry winters and fairly mild summers, and they are also housed on several acres. And so when they come to Oklahoma, they have to be stocked in, you know, much less acres most of the time, depending on how much land the producer has. And also they have to deal with the heat and the humidity of Oklahoma. And so those are kind of the two things that, you know, would be a big difference from where they are from originally. If you are going to own alpacas in Oklahoma, you need to be aware that they are very prone to heat stress, just because, again, they have a very thick fiber coat. And so there's a lot of prevention type of measure that can be done, one of which is shearing. And in the southern states like Oklahoma, that should be done before May 1st.
And what kind of things do alpacas like to eat?
They are herbivores, and so they are actually very efficient herbivores. They do well on, you know, just hay, as long as it's decent protein content, 8-9% or so. They can be supplemented with pellets. There are some commercially available alpaca pellets. If the producer cannot find those in their area, they can use a sheep type of pellets. We don't want to use horse, cattle, or goat type pellets because it has too much copper. They're not going to handle that. And then that's the same thing for the salt-based mineral mix. If you have to go to the next step, it would be a sheep mineral. So that's kind of a very abbreviated version of their feeding.
Just tell us a little bit about what they produce, their coats.
So when it's shearing time, like I mentioned earlier, and that could be done as a prevention for heat stress, but also if they harvest that fiber, they can make various pieces of clothing, and certainly that could be an extra revenue for those alpaca producers. And those gloves are a good example. They are very durable, very warm, and fairly similar to wool, but I think the durability is much, much better. Yeah.
Okay, great information. Thank you very much. Some good information about alpacas. Dr. Melanie Boileau, a food animal veterinarian here at Oklahoma State University.
Joining us once again is Daryl Peel, our livestock marketing specialist. Daryl, it's been a year since we've had any real cattle numbers to deal with, but now we have the 2014 cattle inventory out. What do we learn there?
Well, we didn't get a mid-year report last year, so this report was long awaited in terms of exactly what happened to us last year and what it tells us about this year. So, the all cattle and calves inventory was pretty much as expected. It was down about 1.8%. We did continue liquidating last year. The beef cow number was down a little bit less than 1%, 0.9%. So a much smaller liquidation we've seen in the last couple of years, but still down. Dairy cow numbers were essentially unchanged from a year ago. The beef replacement heifers were up about 1.7. That was also anticipated. In fact, there were some thought it would be a little higher than that, but it was still up at that level. Dairy replacement heifers were unchanged from a year ago. The estimated feeder supply, when you work through the inventory numbers and the cattle on feed number, was down 2.7%. And the 2013 calf crop, again, was smaller by about 1% from the 2012 calf crop.
All right, so that's national numbers. Let's talk about Oklahoma specifically.
In Oklahoma, the all cattle inventory actually increased a little bit, 4.3 million head year over year increase. The beef cow herd was up a little bit in Oklahoma after liquidating significantly in 2011 and 2012 at 1.805 million head. The dairy cow numbers were down slightly, about 2.2% at 45,000 head. Beef replacement heifers showed a sharp increase in Oklahoma, 325,000 head. That's up 16.1% from a year earlier. Our feeder supply was up about 4.9%, and the Oklahoma calf crop for 2013 was unchanged from 2012 levels.
All right, that's a lot of data. Help us understand what that means for 2013, this year we just finished.
Well, again, this report was fairly well anticipated. We did confirm that we continued liquidating the cow herd a little bit. The all cattle inventory was a little smaller. So all of those things were pretty much as anticipated in terms of setting it up. We did see some increase in places like Oklahoma. So several of the larger states, some states showed an increase in beef cow numbers, and particularly the increase in replacement heifers in some of these states.
All right, that's the year that was, but what about right now? What do these numbers tell us about our situation here in February?
Well, as we stand here today, this report has a couple of implications going into 2014. One is that the feeder cattle supply is smaller again, so we understand the high prices we have now in terms of the limited feeder supply going forward. Part of that is due to the fact that the calf crop was a little smaller last year. Part of it is due to the fact the increase in replacement heifers. And so those are all things that were anticipated. It means that we're going to continue to see tighter feeder supplies as we go forward. And the other part of it is the increase in replacement heifers says that once again we are set up to see some potential herd expansion this year. Obviously it's going to depend on forage conditions as we get into the growing season. Springtime will be critical, but certainly the numbers are there. I think the economic signals are there and producers are ready to do it. It's just now a question of whether we have the forage conditions that allow us to follow through with that.
All right, plenty to keep an eye on then. Daryl Peel, Livestock Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Last week, we mentioned an upcoming meeting that will focus on invasive species. For more on insects, here's Extension entomologist Eric Rebeck.
The brown marmorated stink bug, it was accidentally introduced into the U.S. Several years ago. Extra trade with Asia has led to the introductions of many different species, and this is one of them. It doesn't have its complement of natural enemies, the predators and parasitoids, that normally keep its populations in check in its native Asia. So it has exploded in terms of its population size. It feeds on a wide variety of species. The list I looked at recently, there was probably a good 100 different host plants on there. And these range from horticultural crops to agricultural crops. It definitely feeds on things like corn. The nymphs will cause a lot of damage to the leaves, for instance. The adults will attack the ripening fruits of things like peaches, for instance. Okay. And it's also a nuisance pest. It can build up to such high numbers that it can invade homes and become a real stinky nuisance in terms of the sheer number and stench that they produce. Oklahoma, we have not had any detections of this pest just yet. We are kind of sandwiched between Kansas having some detections and Texas having some detections. Doesn't mean it's not here yet, it just means that nobody has actually found it within our borders.
To learn more about this and other invasive plant, animal, and insect species, join Oklahoma Cooperative Extension at a one-day invasive species conference in Oklahoma City. To register, visit our website, sunup.okstate.edu, and click on Show Links. That'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can find us anytime at sunup.okstate.edu. You can also follow us on YouTube and other social media. We leave you today with a few viewer snapshots of the winter weather. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you next time at SUNUP.